Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Today's talk is Positive Thinking 101. Just so you understand that about 2 months ago in the summer, I give a class on Monday nights for young professionals here at the synagogue, and I like to do series because I believe that in order to understand a topic, you have to spend a lot of time with it. And you could think about it or you could fall into it. So when you repeat something over and over again, you actually go through lots of different sources and see something from different angles. That's when it actually becomes part of who you are. So I put together a 20-part series on positive thinking. And I started it in the beginning of August. I started there with a statistic that prompted this particular conversation. And the statistic that I saw, this was in July, that most college students in America, 2023, this is a study that was done in July, have the same level of anxiety as U.S. Army personnel that returned from World War II 75 years ago. And I said this 3 months ago, and what I said was that, what's so interesting is that, we're living in a time of relative calm and peace. And how is it possible that college students today can have the same level of stress as our Army fellows that came back from World War II, who saw some of the most difficult things you could possibly imagine? And then about 25 days ago, the world changed for everybody again. And I don't know what the stress levels are. I would argue it's greater now than it was 25 days ago. And the world changes. And the question is this conversation a positive thinking conversation, the right response right now? Should we be thinking positively right now? Is there room to think positively right now? And I'm going to argue that it's essential that we think positively right now. So what I like to do is I like to bring down sources. It's so funny. The same exact thing happened to me this morning. There was like a little flicker in the morning. I'm not sure if it happened here as well, but anyway, the idea is like this. The Chachamim tell us that the pen of the mouth is the heart. And therefore, the way a person speaks gives me insight into what a person is feeling inside their heart. How you express yourself, how you articulate, how you feel, gives me some inkling into what's going on inside of you. Women naturally have a deeper ability to express themselves. Men are really bad at this. I'm sorry. But it's true. Most women have a better ability to express themselves. Maybe it's because they spent more time being able to express themselves, but most men struggle with it. And therefore, the pen of the mouth is the heart. How we express ourselves is a great expression of what's going on inside. Do you ever find yourselves in a situation where someone calls you in the middle of the day and say, hey, how's it going today? It's Tuesday, yesterday was Monday, such a hard day today at work. Oh, my boss is so annoying, or my kid or my husband, or whatever the scenario is. And we naturally say things, and most of the time, unfortunately, what I find is that most people always respond negatively. It's not so great, it's not so awesome, it's hard, it's difficult, it's challenging. Why do we do that? Why is that? Because we don't want other people to give us ayin hara. Why is it that, or my best is when you look great today. Oh, it's nothing. I love that dress. Oh yeah, I got it from wherever it is. It's not. We always like to deflect. And we're naturally in this negative state, always pushing away anything positive. Right? And it's bad for you. Because if you keep speaking negatively, it goes both ways, by the way. Even though you don't feel it, eventually it goes down into your heart. Okay, so the way in which we respond to the world around us has a dual impact. I might be thinking, oh great, that's such a nice thing, but I can't say it. Eventually, if you keep speaking negatively and you keep deflecting, and you don't know how to absorb, you start changing yourself into a negative human being. So for example, the Torah says, Lo toturu achrei. It says, achrei levavchem ve'enechem. It actually says your heart first, right? That's what the pasuk says. And it's curious because you said it the right way, right? You just said it, well, of course, you shouldn't follow your eyes and your heart. But the pasuk doesn't say that. Pasuk says first your heart and then your eyes. Well, what sees first? Your heart or your eyes? So the Torah is a genius. Obviously, Hashem is a genius. What does he say? He says, you know what? The way you perceive the world has so much to do with how your heart is going to interpret it. And that's why the heart goes first. You should not be drawn after your heart and your eyes, because your heart will color the way you see the world around you. So if you're someone that has a negative heart, a negative outlook, no matter what you see, it's going to be bad. No matter how you perceive the reality, no matter how good it is, right? You're always going to interpret it as being something horrifically bad. And therefore, the Torah is telling you, don't allow yourself to be someone who is moved by the heart. Now, who's in control of the heart? Who is in control of how you feel? Are you a slave to your emotion? Or do you have the ability of controlling how you feel? Which one is it? What's the function and purpose of my emotions? Why is it there? Do the emotions always tell me truths? No. Sometimes I'm annoyed and I'm angry and I shouldn't be. Sometimes I'm frustrated for whatever reason and I push that frustration around me. Why do I do that? Because I believe on a subconscious level that my emotions are who I am. And by the way, this is so much of what's happening on campuses today, that we live in a culture that pushes this ridiculous notion that you are your emotions. You are not your emotions. You are your thinking, you are your choices. There's a great quote from Viktor Frankl, and he says as follows. He says, the one thing that you can't take away from me is the way I choose to respond to what you do to me. This is a Holocaust survivor saying it. The last of one's freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. That's the one thing you have. How are you going to respond? There's another Holocaust survivor who was interviewed by his son. He said, Dad, how did you survive the Holocaust? You know, he said to him, I was in Bergen-Belsen and I chose to be positive in the concentration camps. How do you choose to be positive in a concentration camp, in death camps? So he said, you know what? Listen, I have a choice to make. I'm going to choose how I'm going to respond to the situation. I can't control my environment. I can only choose how I'm going to respond to my environment. So what does he say? He says, you know what? Anytime anyone needs anything, I'm going to be the guy to volunteer. I'm always going to be positive. I'm always going to be the one to help. I'm always going to be the person that's going to get to do something good for the people around me. To the point where even the Nazis in the concentration camp, when they needed to go ahead and take a quota of Jews to go ahead and gas, they wouldn't take him. They liked him. They felt sorry for him. Right? And it was a choice. I want to be someone that's going to respond to my environment in a positive way. I'm not going to allow negative thinking to get in the way. Negativity is the force that gets in the way of all possibility. You cannot move forward from negative places. There was a famous book that was written many years ago. I forget the name of the author. She was a New York Times columnist. She was asked to report on circus trainers and how circus trainers are able to get, monkeys to jump through, to rollerblade and jump through fiery hoops, right? She actually wrote a book out of it later called How to Train Your Husband Like a Dog. And one of the things, it's horrible, I know you're thinking, it's a horrible title, right? So and her goal was to figure out if she could use what she learned from circus trainers and in 30 days train her husband to take out the garbage. And she was matzliach. Now, okay, let me tell you what she did. Ready? The first step of being a circus trainer, okay, is to recognize that the only way to change any behavior is through positive reinforcement. Negativity does not work. You see the monkey rollerblading, you point out what he's doing wrong, he's not going anywhere, he's not changing. The way in which you get change to happen around you, okay, I'm not sharing this for you to go ahead and manipulate your spouses. I'm sharing because I want you to be able to change yourselves, okay? Right? The way in which you change yourself is by recognizing that the only way to change is through good. You reinforce all of the small positive actions that are happening over and over again. The monkey got that first step right, boom, he gets a banana. He gets the second one, another 2 bananas. Anytime you see something that is right, positive, reinforce it over and over again. The same is true with our children, by the way. When you see we often, but they say that 75% of all positive encouragement that a child hears by the time he's 20, he stopped hearing it at the age of 5. That means after the age of 5, okay? He's heard 75% of everything that's negative. We point out all the flaws. Why do we do that? Because we buy into a negative. This, for me, by the way, it's all spiritual. For me, it's because you have something called a Yetzer Hara that wants you to think negatively because it understands that if you are in a negative state, you cannot grow. You cannot grow. A Navi cannot have Nevu'ah unless they were B'simcha, unless they were happy. You can't have a relationship with God if you're depressed. It's a choice to look at the world around. And I know it's hard. I've spent the last 3 weeks crying every single night. It's so painful what's happening. It's horrible. It's the worst nightmare. A man's worst nightmare is to be in a scenario where he cannot help his family. He watches helplessly as other barbarians. That is the worst nightmare of every single man. Okay? And what happened is unimaginable. And it was done on purpose. They video recorded it. They sent it out on Telegram. They were watching it. I have a nephew who's at my house on Simchat Torah, and he's part of the IDF. So on Shabbat, as it was happening in the morning, he was getting all the texts, all the messages. So he was actually very involved in some operations in the West Bank the last few months and clearing things out. So he knows that with the terrorists, they post everything on Telegram. So he went to see what was happening. He was watching this whole thing unfold live on Shabbat. And he didn't say a word to us on Shabbat. I had no idea. I had no idea what was going on. He saw the brutality. He knew all of it. That's a soldier, composed. He had a choice to make. How am I going to respond? A soldier can't go into that battle, into Gaza, if they're thinking negative thoughts. It's not going to work. The only way to win that war is through thinking positively. I know I have the moral clarity. It's super clear about what my mission is, and nothing is going to stand in my way. It's got to be that clear. And it's painful to watch those images of Gazan and children and homes. It's very painful. I struggle with it. But it's super clear to me that unfortunately, this is the Mitziyut. Israel has no choice. Right? It's like what Golda Meir said. Remember what she said? She's like, I won't hate you for killing my children, but I'll hate you for making me kill your children.
No, for making my children my murderers.
For making me kill your children. That's what she said. Yeah. Right? So we have a choice. And the choice is, the one choice that we have is, how are we going to respond to our environment? How are we going to respond to the world that you and I are living in? The word mazal comes from the word nozel. The word nozel means to flow. And it reminds us that everything in the world flows from a higher place to a lower place, which means, for example, there's a famous pasuk in Perkei Avot. It says, Da ma lamala mimcha, right? Know that which is above you. But another way of reading it, if you change the punctuation, is Da ma lamala. Understand that everything that happens above, mimcha, comes from you. Know that everything that comes above, mimcha, is from you. You choose what you bring into this world. And when you are allowing yourself to choose negative thoughts versus positive thoughts, you are creating a negative environment around you. You're reinforcing it. Well, listen, some of you, I'm sure a lot of you have children, and you know that all kids are very different. I have 6 of them, and they're all very special. I have one particular child who, she's complicated. And I love her very, very deeply. But as a young child, her mindset was very negative, and she saw the world through a negative lens. She was always a victim. She that was her narrative. And I recognized it very early, and I said to myself, if I don't do something to change the way she's thinking, for her whole life, all she's going to do is drive negativity to her. And it'll keep reinforcing itself over and over again. And she won't understand, why are all these bad things happening to me? Because all she sees is that. And that's what she pulls down. Whatever's happening around you is mimcha, from you. You can change it. So all I've been doing with her for the last 16 years, 16 years, is constantly helping her see, that's what happened. Oh, my teacher's this. I'm like, what about the other great teacher? I constantly reframe it, constantly. And I'm seeing a change now happen. And I've been doing this for a long time. right? I'm seeing the change. It takes a long time to change a mindset, especially for someone whose mind who's not fully developed. But again, what about us? How are we adjusting our own mindsets? Or do we allow ourselves to become victim of the environment that we're in? Because when you do, you know what happens? You fall into a category called mazal. What is mazal? Mazal means that there's a certain level of predictability in the system that will determine your mitziyut, your reality. And if you do nothing, you make no changes, you just allow yourself to give into your emotion, your feeling, and you don't live a life of choice, you don't have clarity, you're the kind of person that lets life happen versus the individual that makes life happen. You become part of mazal if you let life happen. And therefore your mazal will just determine your mitziyut, your reality. Right? And we see this, by the way, so beautifully from Abraham Avinu, Abraham and Sarah. Look at number 1 for a second. Shabbat, Gemara on Shabbat, right? God stands before God. He says, I looked at my astrological map. This is Abraham speaking. He says, according to the configuration of my constellation, I am not fit to have a son. Abraham says, when I look at derech hateva, when I look at the world of nature, I cannot be a father. It's impossible for me. I look at the stars, my DNA, whatever is set up for me, I could not have a child. God says to him, come out of your astrological sign, right? Because en mazal liYisrael. There is no mazal that can hold you back. That means that even if you feel that you're stuck in a scenario because of the nature of your mazalot, the feeling of being stuck is in your head. You can break out of your mazal. You don't have to be someone who's subjugated to your mitziut. You can change your reality. Right? Look at the next source. God takes Abraham outside and says, look toward the heaven and count the stars. You can count them, that's going to be your offspring. Look what Rashi says. Rashi says, next source, number 3. What does he say? He says, look out of your Yatzei Chutza. Look forth from the outside. God takes him outside of the world of astrology, of the astronomy. Its real meaning is that he brought him outside of his tent so he could look at the stars. In Midrashic explanation, he says, go forth from your astrological speculation, right? Emazal Yisrael, that you have seen by the planets that you will not raise a son. Abraham indeed may have no son, but Abraham will have a son. Sarai may not bear children, but Sarai will bear children. I'll give you other names. I'm going to change your destiny. I'm going to change your luck. Right? Another explanation, he brought him forth from the terrestrial sphere to elevate him from above the stars, and that is why the word hebet looks at, he says, look at the heavens, for this word signifies looking from above downward. What is that last part of Rashi saying to Abraham? Abraham, when you are, those of you that remember your chuppah, right? When you're going to a chuppah, you know that the custom is that the chuppah has to be underneath the stars. Right? You have to have either a skylight or it's got to be outside, and it's different than a what's it called, a sukkah, right? A chuppah is different than a sukkah. A chuppah is open on top, and a sukkah is closed. Why is the chuppah open? The chuppah is open to remind you that when you're getting married, you look up. Don't look down. Don't look at people around you. You should look up. You know why you're looking up? To remind you that everything is possible. The sky is the limit. You're limitless in your relationships. The limits that every relationship has are the limits that you've set for yourselves. Everything is possible. There is no impossible. The word impossible has the same words as I'm possible. Everything is possible. The only limitation that exists is your own limitation that you set for yourselves. So you could be someone who is stuck like Abraham was in the beginning. Oh, it's my mazal. My mazal tells me, what I have, what I can have, children or no children. Or you could say, I'm not going to be limited by my mazal. I want more. I don't want to be someone who's stuck to the regular rhythm of life. I could break out of the rhythm of life. Sarah never had her period. She knew she couldn't have a child. She knew she could never have a kid. And when she heard it, she laughed. It's impossible. And what does Hashem teach the Jewish people? You are possible. The fact that we're having this conversation today in 2023 is a miracle. Do you believe that? Are you aware of the fact that we should not be here having this conversation. That's right. It always is. But I'm saying more than that. More than that is this. The fact that a Jew is alive in 2023 is a miracle. For the last 2,000 years, you saw what happened in Dagestan a couple of days ago? It's crazy. Yeah. It's insane. Right? That was every Jew's reality for 2,000 years. No one knew about it. There was no social media to see it. So if you were living in Syria or in Lebanon or in Egypt or in Iraq or wherever you were from, Iran, Turkey, Morocco, you had no idea what was going on in Poland and in Russia. But that was their reality. That was their reality all the time. That's how Jews lived. My parents always taught me, they're immigrants in this country, you always got to lock your door, you can't trust anybody, it's super secret, you don't wear a kippah outside, you have a star, you tuck it in, you blend in, you go to good universities, you keep it quiet. There's none of this. And I remember very vividly this is like 20 years ago on my first birthright trips. I used to run birthright trips for college students, and we're on a hike in the north, on Har Evel, and I see this guy. He takes off his shirt. It's really hot, and I don't mean he was hot. I mean like he was just hot. Anyway, so I know what you're thinking. Anyway, so he takes off his shirt, and he has this huge tattoo of a lion on his chest, breaking out of the kotel, with this huge Star of David around the whole thing. So I said to this guy, I'm like, well, that's a really interesting tattoo you got there. He's like, yeah. He's like, I went to the kotel when I was a kid for my bar mitzvah. He's like, I was so inspired. He's like, I just wanted to imprint it on my chest. Like, that's something like my family, forget about tattooing, but like to go ahead and like to wear like your Judaism on your skin and to skin it, to ink it onto your chest was like, how would you ever do that? How many kids today feel like that Jewish pride and they'll tattoo the words emet, on their forearms or on their back of their neck and whatever it is. Like those ideas of like outward Jewish expression was something that didn't happen in my generation because those things were very private. We remember the world that was before and we forgot about it.
But it still is not allowed to tattoo.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm not saying you're allowed to. Just saying what he did, right? That was his expression. The truth is, by the way, if you could get a non-permanent tattoo, right? You could have it on your, technically, the issue of a tattoo is permanence, but if it's non-permanent, they have ink that goes away after 6 months. You could probably get away with it. But I'm not. You didn't hear it here. Anyway, so the rabbi at Savra told me I could get a tattoo. No, I didn't say that. All right. Anyway, so let's go back. So Abraham, he breaks out of his reality by looking up. He breaks out of his constraints, astrological constraints, by saying, I want to be more. And God is teaching him this. He doesn't know this himself. He's just saying, look, listen, this is my reality. I was born under these constellations. I was born under these circumstances. This is my lot. What does God do? Lo yikra od et shimcha Avraham. He changes his name. Do something. You're going to be Av Hamon Goyim Natiticha. Is this true, this pasuk? Is that true? Is Avraham the father of many, many nations? Yes. And the answer is yes. How do I know that? How many people live on planet Earth? About 7 billion. That's it. 7 billion people on planet Earth. That's it. Okay, it was a big deal. I think like 7 years ago, we finally went from 6 billion to 7 billion. This is the first time in history we're actually seeing population decline for the next 20, 30 years. The world's getting smaller, not bigger. Okay? So how, out of the 7 billion people, how many of them are monotheistic? About 50%, which means 3 billion. Okay? 3 billion, you have Christians, Muslims that make up a majority of that, and a small percentage of that, right, less than 1%, is you and me. That's it. We have 15 million Jews on planet Earth. That's it. There are 1.2 billion Muslims on planet Earth, which is why we're never going to win the social media war. No matter what you do, no matter how many likes you think you can get, we're just never going to win that game. You're never going to win the marches in the streets because we don't have 1.2 billion people outside. It's not going to happen. right? You have 1.5 billion Christians, right? We could definitely have, there's definitely a lot of unity work you can do, right? 100%. I'm not saying that, chas v'shalom, I'm not saying it, I want you to know, I'm a very positive person. I really, truly believe that all of the challenge that we're going through, at the end, is going to flip. In the same way, if you would have told me on October 6th, by the way, after Chag, you're going to hear, and just tell me what's going to happen, I'd be like, you're crazy. It's impossible. In Israel, impossible. Impossible. It's not going to happen. And the whole world changed in 24 hours. And in the same way it flipped in one direction, it could flip the opposite direction. 100%. Rabbi Akiva, remember the story of Rabbi Akiva? He's out there. Second temple is destroyed. And the rabbis are all crying. They see a fox walking through the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Like, what a bizayon. How embarrassing. Look at this fox, an animal walking through one of the holiest places on earth. And Rabbi Akiva is laughing. And he says, they say, why are you laughing? He says, don't you know the prophecy? It says that if the same way it went one way, the opposite is true. It's the opposite is true also. In the same way that we fell into this craziness of the world that we're in right now, we flipped from place of everything was possible, right? Now we're scared. There's fear. There's nothing to be afraid about. The word ish is an acronym for en shum yush. There is no giving up. There is no abandoning hope. To be a human being means to always be hopeful. That's what it means to be the children of Abraham. Abraham and Sarah had every reason to give up hope. He went to war last week, 4 kings and the 5 kings. The 4 kings defeated the 5 kings. And Abraham, him and his little band of monotheists are going to fight the 4 kings that defeated the 5 kings? And the answer is yes. Because you have a secret power. Anything is possible. We know this more than anyone else. We've broken all the odds. Everything that, whenever people tell me I can't, it's nonsense. You're creating your own limitations. You choose to think negatively. And I will not allow, certainly Hamas or the media, to get into my head for me to think negatively. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to allow it. It's super clear to me what has to be done. It's going to be hard. But I know one thing, and one thing is for sure, right? We're on the right side of history. We always have been. And by the way, it takes the world years to catch up. Years to catch up. We look back at every episode in history, and we look back, well, those are the wrong guys. Those guys were wrong. These guys are wrong. It takes time. I get it. It's not easy. And I want you to know, definitely very challenging times. No question about it. This is different than any other time in history. But I'm confident at the end of it, we will look back, we will see how Israel, not perfect, the army is not perfect because they're human, they're humans and humans are fallible, but what they want at their core, their ratzon, is they don't want to hurt anybody. No Jewish kid wants to hurt anybody. There's no Jewish person that would, I know someone who works at Zaka in Israel, and he can't do his job. He had to take 2 weeks. He's like, I can't do it. He's like, I've been peeling, I can't say it. It's horrible. It's horrible. These are things that lo yuman. You can't understand what these people, how they thought. The most barbaric. Animals don't behave that way. To take a baby out of a mother and then kill the mother afterwards. It's not an animal. Animals don't do that. These are monsters. Monsters. Not an animal. Every single creature on the planet understands what its purpose is. Everything around you is completely aligned with what its function is, except for human beings. Everything has a deep awareness. Every animal, every insect, every bird, everything around you is living in perfect harmony with its environment except for us. And the reason for that is because you and I need to make a choice of what kind of people we want to be. Don't allow the circumstance to define it. That's what this is telling you. Choose to become something more. Look at number 6. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Arba dvarim makarin gzar din shel adam. There are 4 things that tear up a person's sentence in Shemaim, and these are them: tzedakah, shinui Hashem, and shinui ma'aseh. These are the 4 things. You want to know how to protect yourselves? You want to know how to make change? Okay, number 1 is go out and do charity. Do something positive. Okay, number 2, tzedakah. What is tzedakah? Tzedakah is tefillah. Go and pray. It works. There are studies. I could do a whole series of classes on just tefillah. There were studies that were done in the last 30 years of groups praying for other people and the impact the prayers had on the people getting better. Tzedakah works. Shinui Hashem, okay, this is Kabbalistic. You want to change your name. Vishinui Maaseh, which at the end of it, which I would argue is the most important one out of all of them, is change your actions. The one thing that we could all need to change is how we think. Okay, now let's do this. In order to create change, you have to make change. Change doesn't happen on its own. Teva is set up in a way where if you allow the world to move at a certain particular course, it's going to move in that direction. If I take this cup and I place it on the moon, okay, and I put it down on the moon, will that cup ever move? And the answer is no. It'll never move unless an outside force comes and pushes it. And it will remain in motion and space until some other power stops it. That is the world that you and I live in. Every time we make a choice, there's a reaction that is happening in the world around us, a chain reaction that has the ability of completely changing the course of our reality. It has to do with the actions that you and I take. I cannot control my environment. I can only control my response to the environment. The first step to growth is to realize that you are not stuck. The first step to growth is recognizing that you have the ability of growing. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how difficult it is. I don't care the challenges. I don't care the circumstances. Any limitation you put for yourself is a self-imposed limitation that you put on yourself. It's not real. What would you attempt to do right now if you knew you could not fail? What would you do? What's the first thing you would do? I'm just saying. I know there's lots of potential, right? But why do we have limiting thoughts? The limiting thoughts that you and I carry in our world comes from this place of negativity. The negativity is what is holding you back from expressing the best of you. It gets in the way of our relationships with our spouses, with our families, with our children, with our communities. It's that same negative thinking. You got to get rid of it. There's no place for it. The Gemara in Sanhedrin tells us that one of the simanim that you're living during the time of Mashiach is va'emet ne'aderet, that truth will be lost. People won't know it's true anymore. I'm not saying anything that's crazy, but this is a truth that every single person knew for a long time. The people that survived Jewish history always understood that the way to survive Jewish history is about a mindset, a belief. That's how we're here. You're here because you have mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers who are the most positive people on the planet, who had every reason to give in and give up in the worlds that they came from. It's not like it is today. Today, a college kid to have anxiety, wow. Air conditioning, internet. I mean, we have every luxury you could possibly imagine. They didn't have that 100 years ago. There was nothing. There was no time for any of that stuff. You were busy surviving. I'm not saying it's not challenging for our children. All I'm saying is that we need to go ahead and train them to reframe their world into something that is more powerfully positive. Talmud Yomah, number 7. If a person was not careful in observing the Torah and mitzvot, and later he decides to improve his actions, it will be easier for him to change if he moves to a new place. That is because the people of his previous place will remind him of his old ways, and he will be tempted to return to them. But if he moves to a new place where no one else knows him, he'll be able to start anew. And this is what the sage says: one who wishes to repent should move to a new place. This is the idea of shinui makom, shinui mazal, changing your place. If you want to do something good, you want to make a change, you've got to do something to make that change. Change does not happen on its own. It requires you to do something. For example, the Rashba makes at this point over here, tells us this interesting story over here. It says a blind man was standing on a racetrack, right? And he can't see the horses galloping down his direction. They're about to trample him. On the side of the track stands a man who sees what's about to happen. The man can take one of two actions to prevent an accident. He can try to divert the horses from their path, or he can move the blind man out of harm's way. Stopping the horses is not an option. because they are bearing down on the blind man at high speed, nor can they be diverted from their path because then they would trample the man who is standing on the side of the track. But the seeing man can do one thing. You know what he can do? He can shout out to the blind man. He's got to move him out of the way. Because the horses are not, they're not stopping. There's a path to life that is happening. Okay? There is a course that is happening in front of us. While the horses are coming down, and nothing can stop the horses from happening. Right? The one change I can make is how I step out of the way. Yeah. Go for it.
Suppose somebody's calling you and texting you and emailing you very negative things, like super negative, and you're trying to be as positive as you can in your life, and you decide to block them. And you sort of feel bad for blocking them. Is this like a terrible thing?
No, absolutely not. No.
You have to survive, no?
100%. You got to take care of yourself.
Right.
You come first. It says, "Ani ircha kodem." The impoverished of your community comes first, right? You need to take care of yourself. B'chai b'hem, the Torah says. You got to live. You can't. If you're surrounded by negative people, the first thing you got to do is find new people. Find new people. All right. If you're someone that is stuck, with negativity, make sure you're surrounded by happy people. It has an impact. It definitely impacts us. Don't allow negativity to be the cause of so much more blindness that happens in the world around us. Gemara tells us this story of Leah. I just want to explain to you this one story of Leah. I love the story. So we know that Leah is supposed to have a seventh child. She already has 6 of the Shvatim, and she's pregnant again. And she's supposed to have another son. And she does a cheshbon, Dinah. She does a judgment. And, she says like this: if I had the 7th child, right, because she knew there were going to be 12 Shvatim, then Rachel, who only has 1 kid, will only have 1 child. Less than the Shifchaot, less than the maidservants. All the maidservants already had 2. There's only room for 1 more kid. So what does she do? She makes a calculation. She prays and says, you know what? I want this child to be a girl. Because I don't want my sister to be embarrassed that she only has 1 kid. So she switches the gender of the kid. She prays, and she has a baby girl instead. Okay? This is what happens. So now you know what the story happens, right? The baby is born. She's raised. And Tetzedina, she goes out, and she's in Shechem, right? And some guy by the name of Shechem ben Chamor, right? Finds her, and he rapes her. Right? So the question that everyone asks is, how is nothing's changed down there, right? Why did this happen to Leah? That's not fair.
What's her name?
Leah, the baby's name is Dinah.
She had Dinah?
Yeah, she had Dinah. And Dinah is raped. Now we understand the backstory. The backstory is supposed to be a boy. She makes this sacrifice, and this is how she's paid back. This is a horrible thing. So if you stop the story right here, it sounds tragic. But that's not how the story ends. What ends up happening is Dinah has a child. What's her name? Osnat. Osnat moves to Egypt. Who does she marry?
Yosef.
Her uncle, Yosef. Okay, she has 2 children. What are their names? Ephraim and Menashe. Now Yaakov, at the end of Sefer Bereshit, we know that Yaakov is so blown away by Ephraim and Menashe. I'm not sure if you know this, but the custom on Friday night is to give a bracha to your kids. And to the boys, what do we say? Why like Ephraim and Menashe?
Because they kept their Judaism.
Because they were in exile. They could not express their identities clearly and obviously, but they maintained a deep level of Jewish identity, and therefore the bracha for our children is they should be like Ephraim and Menashe. But not Reuven and Shimon. Not Reuven and Shimon. Not the 2 oldest sons of Yaakov. Right? But he did both of them. Why? Because we know that Ephraim and Menashe are like Reuven and Shimon, which means if you actually look on the map of Israel, when the Jewish children come to the land of Israel, Ephraim and Menashe have their own portion. Right? They have their own space. So listen to this. You think that Leah lost, right? She gave up 1 shevet, but really she got 2 more. You gotta wait till the end of the story. The story hasn't come to an end. Don't tell me about your tzarot. You didn't see the whole thing yet. It's not over. It's going to flip. There is no scenario where there's evil in the world that goes unchecked. It doesn't work like that. When you make a sacrifice, you're always going to be rewarded for it. It always comes back, no matter what. Think of it like this, ready? Where was the Torah given? Har Sinai. Where was the Beit HaMikdash built? Why not on Har Sinai? How much cooler would it have been to have, like, imagine your temple in some mountain somewhere in the desert, and we go on pilgrimages out to the desert, you go on a hike, you go up the mountain, and you find your temple sitting there somewhere, like in Tibet, on some mountaintop, But that's not our story, though. Why is the Beit HaMikdash in Jerusalem? And yeah, I know it's in Israel, but then why was the Torah? The Torah was the biggest event, bigger than the Beit HaMikdash. Why is that in the desert? It would make more sense if I was writing the story to say, okay, if that's where the Torah is given, that's where the temple should be. But that's not where it's built. It's built in Jerusalem. There's two answers to that question.
That's where he brought Isaac to sacrifice.
Okay, no, that's right. So number one is that's where Abraham brings Isaac for a sacrifice. So, right, you're on the right track. What's that? Whenever you make a sacrifice of any sort, that is where Kedusha is. I don't care if God came down on Mount Sinai and gave us the Torah and spoke to us there. That's not Kadosh. You know what Kedusha is? Where there's sacrifice. That's where there's holiness. There was no other sacrifice. That's why it's not there. The second answer as to why it was given in the desert and not in Israel is because if the Torah was given in Israel, in Jerusalem, the whole world will say, the Torah is not for us, it's for the people of that land. Who owns the desert? Nobody. And therefore the desert is open to everyone. The Torah is given for everyone, not just for the Jewish people inside the land of Israel. And that's why it's given in the desert, a place that belongs to no one. No one's the king of the desert. No one wants the desert. It's given in the desert to remind you that it's for everyone, not just for the Jewish people living in the land of Israel. What? The Quran is their, the what? Yes, so? What about it?
That's the Bible.
I know. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So Dinah makes this whole entire judgment, and she recognizes that, you know what? It looks bad from her perspective, but ultimately, as time moves on, the world changes. Justice will take place. I'm confident that in time, Israel will win the war. I'm confident that we will see peace in our time, by the way, because things are moving much faster than they've ever moved before in our history. Things are not, this is not normal. It's not normal for us to live in a time in the world where you see the atrocities and the next day be a witness to it, thousands of miles away. In the Holocaust, when Jews were hearing about the stories of coming out of concentration camps, it took years for them to hear about it. And when they see black and white fuzzy images, what is that? How do I know what that is? Maybe, today you have high definition GoPro cameras with, it's horrible. We experience the trauma, right? All of us, but I know, there's certain things that I know. These are the truths. The truth is that we are put into a circumstance that we have the ability to overcome. Hashem does not challenge people unless they have the power of overcoming the challenge that they are in. No one in this world can overcome your unique set of challenges. Do you understand that? You go to the gym, okay, and you want to get a trainer. The trainer's going to sit you down. He says, okay, let's figure out how much weight you can lift. So he lies you down. You're sitting on the bench press, and he gives you the bar, and you're like struggling with the bar, okay, and then you do this for weeks. You finally get the form right. Everything is moving perfectly. You know how to do it. You can do your sets of 20 and 30 and so on and so forth. He says, amazing. And then he starts putting on 10 pounds on each side. And now you're struggling again. And you're like, what are you doing? I finally figured it out. He's like, yeah, but this right now is where the struggle is what makes it real. The challenge is what makes life real. The circumstances where it's hard is where we have the opportunity to grow. Now is the tremendous amount of opportunity for our growth. There are two kinds of people that are going to walk away from this experience. The people that will be broken by it because they gave in to the negativity. They gave in to the narrative of the world versus the people that said, I want to use this and channel this for my growth. I want to use this to become someone that is going to get up and do the tzedakah, do the chesed, do what I need to do to make the world a better, greater place. We say in the alphabet, the gimel is always running, right? It always at the leg. The gimel is gomel, is running after the daled. Daled is dalim. Why is the daled poor? The daled actually represents depression in Judaism. Why? The daled, if you think about it, are two intersecting lines that go nowhere. When you don't know in life where you're going, you're broken and depressed. You don't have clarity. What comes after the daled? He, right? Chamisha, right? Chamisha is the same otiyot as simcha, right? The word 5 has the same otiyot in Hebrew as the word happiness. Why is 5 happy? What's the difference between a daled and a he? A little bit. A little bit. That's the difference between being depressed and being besimcha. What happens, right? You have the daled, doesn't know where it's going in life. It's stuck. What is the he? The he has a little line on the bottom. It's expanding itself. The daled is depressed. You close up. To be besimcha means to be expansive. Possibilities are there. You're opening yourself up. The he is opening itself up. It's pulling away from the corner. It's bigger, it's better, it's greater. The word nega in Hebrew, what does it mean? The word nega means affliction. I also suspect the word nega is the root word in English for negativity. Right? Now the words nega, nun, gimel, ayin, right, has the same otiyot as oneg, as pleasure. What's the difference between nega and oneg? Where do you put the ayin? In the word nega, the ayin is at the end. The letter ayin is at the end. In the word oneg, pleasure, where is the ayin in the beginning? How you perceive the world will determine if your reality is pleasurable or negative. It's your choice. You choose to see it. I could choose it, oh, it's horrible. No. The story of Rabbi Akiva reminds us, the story of the Torah itself is a story of people that would say to you, it's impossible. It can't happen, God. And the whole entire story of the Torah, the story of our people, is a story of all possibilities are on the table. Why are you limiting yourselves? You want to be besimcha, or you want to be depressed. You know what depression comes from? There's no hope. I'm stuck. 2 lines going nowhere. I'm depressed. I'm broken. Impossible for me to change. Impossible for things to ever correct themselves. The circumstances are dire. Nothing. It's horrible. Where are we going? That's ridiculous. Do not live your lives in depression. It's a choice you're making. To be besimcha means that you can expand out of the situation you're in. There's hope. There's potential. There's possibility. You have to change that reality for yourself. It's not going to happen in the world around you. You have to make that choice. Gemara and Shabbat over here very quickly, because we're running out of time. I want to finish this. Says that someone's about to get hurt. A Jew's about to get hurt, and the rabbi says to him, "No, the Jew's not going to get hurt. He has the power of changing his mazal." That's the Gemara in Shabbat. It's over there also. The Gemara in Sanhedrin talks about how Melech David. This is Mashiach. Let's just do that very quickly. He says, and Rabbi Yochanan said on the back of the page, last page over here. He said, David Melech. This is Mashiach will come only in a generation that is entirely innocent. Right? In which case they'll be deserving of the redemption, or in a generation that is entirely guilty, in which case there will be no alternative to redemption. He may come in a generation that is entirely innocent, as is written, and he quotes the pasuk over here. He may come in a generation that is entirely guilty, as it is written, and he saw that there was no man, and was astonished. There was no intercessor, right? Therefore, his arm brought salvation to him, and his righteousness has sustained him. And it is written, for my own sake will I do it. For how should I be profaned? And my glory, and I will not give to another. Meaning, at the end of the day, if we are guilty, if we are innocent, it doesn't really matter. No matter what you do, at the end, God says, I'm going to bring Mashiach. I don't care if you're not ready for it. Right? But just be mindful. I have a suspicion. As we're getting closer to whatever it is we're moving, because we all feel it, we're moving towards something. Right? Wherever that place is, I'll tell you one thing that I know for sure. As we get closer and closer and closer, there's one thing I know is that you're going to lose more and more of your free will. Right? Why am I saying that? Because as it becomes more and more clear and obvious to us that God is pulling the strings, because it's not clear 100%, but as it becomes more and more obvious, and it will become more and more obvious in time, you're going to have less and less ability to make choices. Your time for potential and growth is now. Now. You can't get this time again. Look how the world changed so fast. The time for growth, the time to make a choice about what you want your reality to look like is now. It's going to be easy. It's going to be easy soon. It's going to change. And there's no reward when there's no struggle. Gemara says, according to the pain is the reward. We're going to move away from that very soon, Bezrat Hashem. We're going to get to a place where we're going to have super clarity, 100% understanding of the world that you and I are living in. To be besimcha, okay, the word besimcha is the same otiot as b'machshava. Thoughts is what makes happiness. Pushing away negative thinking, pushing away negative speech, pushing away negative ideas in your own mind, pushing yourself away from negative circumstances, choosing to live a life of positivity, of reframing the world around you is your choice. And now is the time for that greatness. As your happiness trainer, okay? I am telling you, okay, that the circumstances that you're in right now are uniquely designed for your growth. Okay, last concept, and I'll take questions. Okay, where do you find diamonds? Diamonds. You find them in the dirtiest ash pits of the planet. They're filthy. You go ahead, you dig and dig and dig in the dirt. You're dark and dirty and muddy, and you find this beautiful glimmering stone. And do you remember that when you're looking at your diamond, okay? No pressure, no diamond. No challenge, no excellence, no brilliance, no growth. Okay? Everything that we are going through is uniquely designed to make us sparkle like a diamond. This pasuk says, "V'zacharta Hashem Elokecha ki hu hanoten lecha koach la'asot chayil." Be mindful, Moshe is saying. God is giving you the power to do great things. Laman hakim et brito asher nishmat levatecha kayom hazeh. You have the power. It's there. It's just waiting for you to go ahead and actually use it. My bracha to each of you is that you